So it was just announced that the New York Democratic primary will be canceled. I believe it was scheduled to take place June 23rd. So there was it was basically they took everybody's names off of the ballot except for Joe Biden. There's a new law in New York State that allows the Board of Elections, to take candidates off the ballots if they have suspended their campaign, which Bernie Sanders did. And this move to cancel the primary, and then the addition of taking Bernie's name off the Democratic primary ballot, has angered a lot of his supporters, rightfully, in my sense, from a certain perspective, because they see it as just another move by the Democratic establishment, the centrist wing of the party, trying to foil Bernie Sanders' chances of getting more delegates, to potentially push the party platform, further to the left. The more delegates he has, the more sway he would have in maybe being able to do that. So I definitely understand people's angers at them, canceling this primary. Again, they said, well, Joe Biden's the only candidate who's still in the race. Bernie Sanders has suspended his campaign. He's endorsed Joe Biden. So it's basically a foregone conclusion that Bernie Sanders will be or I should say that Joe Biden would win. I mean, there's a few problems with that from my perspective. The very serious and obvious and sad cognitive decline of Joe Biden, what seems to be a very credible sexual assault allegation against Joe Biden that has just, kind of resurfaced with more evidence supporting Tara Reade's claims, that Joe Biden sexually assaulted her back in, I believe, August of 1993. The huge lack of enthusiasm around Joe Biden and his campaign, and how they're basically running a campaign of limited exposure, because they see that the more Joe Biden gets in front of a camera, the more he interacts, with these various media outlets and personalities, the worse it looks for him. And it basically looks like his wife at this point, Joe Biden, is kind of running his campaign to a certain extent. I saw a video last night online of Joe Biden where it's him just standing there and his wife, Jill Biden, doing all the talking. But to my understanding, it's Joe Biden who's running for president, not Joe Biden. So, I mean, all of those reasons, and just the, fuckery of the Democratic Party establishment to do whatever they can to limit the amount of power and influence that Bernie has, that's all understandable. I get that. But also, I mean, we got to look at this with as unbiased and objective lens as we can. And if we are to do that, then some of the blame, we need to put this back on Bernie. Why the fuck did you suspend your campaign in the middle of this pandemic where Joe Biden is missing in action? There's a credible and very serious and disgusting sexual assault allegation against Joe Biden. The serious and very sad cognitive decline that we're seeing in real time from Joe Biden. The decades-long track record of horrible policy. He doesn't support fucking Medicare for all during a pandemic, when before this happened, 68,000+ people in the United States were dying because they didn't have health care in the U.S. 500,000+ people were going bankrupt due to medical debt. He doesn't support a Green New Deal when our world is literally, burning, and, we're not going to have a future on this planet if we don't treat the, climate change as the existential crisis as it is, and all of these other things, And then, again, so Bernie drops out a week later, enthusiastically supports Joe Biden without getting any type of policy concessions. If he hadn't suspended his campaign, he would still be on the ballot there. This election probably would have went along, so it didn't happen. And, so we got to lay some of the blame on Bernie Sanders for this for letting this happen. Again, if he hadn't have dropped out, if he hadn't have suspended his campaign and endorsed Joe Biden without any type of policy concessions, then they wouldn't have been able to do this. They wouldn't have been able to use this new, shitty, undemocratic law that they created to cancel the primary and take Bernie Sanders' name off the ballot. So yes, it's definitely shady and should be condemned what the New York State of Elections is doing by canceling this primary. They could have easily moved it to voting by mail and just don't need any polling places open, don't need any poll workers, send everybody a ballot, they mail it, boom, you get your vote that way. But again, some of the blame, needs to be laid at the feet of Bernie Sanders for suspending his campaign in the middle of a pandemic when it's very clear that Joe Biden does not have what it takes to address any of these huge, serious, and oftentimes existential crises that we are facing right now with any level of, competency whatsoever. And I mean, it's sad to say, but he's lucky if he can string together a couple of coherent sentences without completely forgetting where he's at, what office he's running for, or what point he was trying to get across. I mean, so Bernie, a good chunk of the blame needs to be laid on him, unfortunately, because again, he wasn't willing to stand up and fight and stay in the race and at least get some, policy concessions from Biden, or as Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk is called for him committing to, some executive orders like, legalizing marijuana, canceling all student loan debt. Those are executive orders that the president could actually, implement without any type of congressional approval or anything like that. So yes, again, it's shady, it's fucked up, it's undemocratic, them canceling the primary, not letting New York voters being able to, cast their ballot for Bernie Sanders, for Biden, for whoever else. It's not surprising because, again, the Democratic establishment, the neoliberal centrist party hacks, throughout this process have done everything that they can to shaft Bernie at every turn. That was to be expected, and what control Bernie had would have been to stay in the race, and he would still have that leverage at that point, but he doesn't right now because he dropped out, he suspended, and he endorsed Joe Biden without getting any type of policy concession. So again, yes, the New York Board of Elections, shady, corrupt, party hacks, but Bernie, unfortunately, was not fit for purpose. He liked to talk about a political revolution, but when it actually got down to the nitty-gritty of actually, speaking truth to power and really making the Democratic establishment bend to his will, he wasn't willing to do that, and as a result, they're able to, employ this law where they were able to cancel the election and take Bernie Sanders' name off the ballot. So it's sad, it's disgusting, it's undemocratic, but that stuff, unfortunately, was to be expected. And a lot of the blame, from my perspective, goes back on Bernie Sanders. He's not fit for the purpose. He wasn't willing to stand up and fight when it really mattered, and as a result, the Democratic Party, apparatchiks, the party hacks, are able to get away with, canceling the Democratic primary because of that law. So, I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around, in my opinion. Peace.